Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby, where we hope to be informative and entertaining and help you keep your modeling mojo alive. Hello, listeners. This is your host, Mike, and we welcome you back for episode 5 of Plastic Model Mojo. Dave and I appreciate all of you joining us again, and we would like to thank all those who've taken time to rate, comment, send us a message or email. That all makes this really fun for us, and we do appreciate it. It's a new month, and we have a lot to cover, so let's get the modeling mojo rolling. How you doing tonight, Dave?
I'm doing fine, Mike. Yourself?
Pretty good weekend. I can't complain too much. I've got a fair amount of things done.
Well, good. I've been making progress as well. So what modeling fluid have you chosen tonight?
I am still drinking the Four Roses small batch. Four Roses, not too far away. It's down in Lawrenceburg, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good. I had to go neat last night. I was drinking it over ice, and it was like trying to figure it out, trying to understand what I was tasting, and couldn't quite get there. So I finished what I had, and then I poured a short one with no ice. And you know, it's oaky and caramely. It's not as sweet as some. It's pretty good. I wouldn't pick it over my Bullet, my favorite, but
I was going to ask how it compared.
It's not quite as spicy. I don't think there's as much rye in it.
Oh, okay.
What about you?
Well, I've come in off the veranda because it's wintertime up here and it's cold in Kentucky. My wife made me put away the corncob pipe because I can't smoke it in the house. And I've also put away the bourbon, at least temporarily, in favor of what I think probably is my favorite modeling fluid of all, across all types, all spectrums, all everything. I'm having Hofbrauhaus Hefeweizen beer. Now, Hofbrauhaus is a beer hall and brewery in Munich, Germany, and you can actually buy their imported bottled beer at stores and places here. But Hofbrauhaus opened 3 beer hall locations in the United States, one in Pittsburgh, one in Columbus, and one in Cincinnati. It's actually in Newport, Kentucky, all areas with big German populations. And if you go to the Hofbrauhaus at any one of those locations, I go to the one in Newport, you can buy their beer, in addition to great German food, you can buy their beer fresh. It's brewed there on the facility. You can get it in growlers and half growlers, and it's fresh. And there is something completely different about fresh beer. This stuff, literally can drink it anytime, anywhere. It's my favorite beer by far. So I'm having my wife went up to Cincinnati, or the model wife went up to Cincinnati over the weekend, and she brought me back a growler of Hofbrauhaus Hefeweizen, and I've tied into it for our broadcast tonight.
Well, sounds like we're doing pretty good for a couple of banjo plucking hayseeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Well, the listener mail has been ramping up a little bit. I've got a few here that are
good. Tell us about it.
Worth mentioning.
Before you start, just want to remind everybody, whatever you're listening to us on, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, go in, rate us, give us 5 stars, because that'll help spread the word on the podcast.
Okay. Our first one is from Adam Greenwald, and he comes to us from Whitley Bay in the United Kingdom, in Northumberland. It's up on the northeast coast, not too far from the Scottish border. He gave us some nice compliments, but he was talking about show topics and kits we need. We had the episode, our
Yeah.
first episode was about kits we need, and he is a submarine modeler, and he's lamenting the lack of wartime, World War II wartime Royal Navy submarines
He's absolutely right about that.
in any
They're
scale.
Yeah, he's right about that. Particularly my favorite scale and 72nd scale. We've got several German U-boats. We've got some of their smaller submarines as well. We've got an American Gato. We've got a Japanese sub in 72nd scale, plus some Japanese mini subs. But the British, who had a really good submarine force and some were very, very effective, particularly early in the war, the 1939, 40, 41 period, has been totally neglected as far as modeling goes. So he's right about that.
And he called out Airfix on the spot, pretty much. See, which is kind of hard to believe that they've never done one.
Yep, it is. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Airfix has made a good comeback. I love their kits. Let's hope that they listen to us and listen to him and crank out a British submarine or two.
Next, we've got Hector Colon from Chicagoland area. He's a member of the Butch O'Hare IPMS chapter up there. There's a famous name. Just some good props from him. And the name and the Butch O'Hare chapter, I think he might have written in to Dave and the guys down in Australia. It's just sounds familiar to me. So we thank him for listening, and we had a little short chat about the old Chicago figure show days. I guess it's still going on, but we haven't been up as a club to that in quite some time. But those were some good trips.
Mike, do you remember you and I coming back from a Chicago figure show, and we both had dates that night?
Yes, we did. We both had the first date with our future wives.
Indeed.
Now I can't remember if we were coming back or were we leaving the Saturday before.
No,
we after our first dates.
We were coming back. We had gone up Friday, and we were coming back after the show on Saturday. And one of the reasons we needed to get back is you and I both had first dates with what turned out to be our wives. So yeah, Chicago holds a good place in my memory for that reason.
Well, I used to enjoy that show. That was just always a fun trip.
Yeah, we need to go back.
A couple more. We have one from CJ Leyendecker, and he's actually from Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a big time scratch builder, kit basher, and I told him he needs to try to. He's wanted to come by the club, and I've told him he needs to try to do that. Yeah, and I gave him the normal meeting nights, and I told him there's usually somebody there on Saturday morning too at the workshop.
Well, he and Travis would get along great because
yes, he sent that picture of what he called the Terrahurst, and it was a huge multi-wheeled kit bashed, really Mad Max Thunderdome looking vehicle. And yeah, I think Travis and the other sci-fi contingent of MMCL would really get along with him.
Yeah.
But better yet, he's a home brewer, and he has offered to drop off a couple of his latest once he goes to bottle at MMCL, and provided that Brian and Martin don't drink it before we get there. He's trying to work an inside angle here and get to our hearts. He's promised us from homebrew model fluid.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
How about that? That does sound fantastic.
I'm telling you what, okay, it was worth starting this podcast. Good idea.
And finally, from Westminster, Colorado, we have David Waples. I'm going to say it's Waples. It's spelled like Naples, Florida, except with a W. And I added him to the lineup tonight because he mentioned something. He's also a disciple of John Miller from our prior conversations. And he mentioned that for airbrush cleaning after acrylic paint, a mix of 50% denatured alcohol and 50% Windex. And that would be Windex, the original formulation, the ammonia-based formulation, not some of the newer ones.
Yeah.
And not the party hooch made from berry blue Kool-Aid and pure grain alcohol. That probably wouldn't work either.
I'm not even going to ask.
But anyway, John had mentioned this formula to me too, and I hadn't mentioned it on our podcast. So thanks, David. Another David. Have to give that a shot. I
Yeah,
use ammonia. If I've ever shot future, I use ammonia to clean that out with. But the
absolutely.
denatured alcohol, actually, John had given me this recipe for degreasing plastic before you even paint. So kind of
Mm,
coming at the same thing from a different angle, but
yeah, yeah. I know
it all works out.
John's a big believer in degreasing every model, even if it doesn't seem like it needs it prior to building and painting. So
Well, I think if it needs it, most of what you're taking off is your fingerprints and grease from your hands and stuff. Because modern tool design, if you've done a good job, mold release is not a common thing on an injection mold floor, believe it or
yeah,
not.
yeah,
So, I've gotten some of those Eastern European kits from when the wall first came down. They were just coated in slime, basically.
yeah,
But modern Tamiya stuff like that,
yeah,
they're probably not using it.
yeah,
Probably don't have to.
yeah.
If
Some
you
of
have to
those
use it,
tools.
you have a problem.
Yeah. So
Well, that's all I got for listener mail.
yeah. So what? Since our last episode, what's on your bench?
Well, we'll start with the one I haven't done any work on. It would be the Zis 2 anti-tank gun. I just haven't. I've been working on other stuff. I just haven't taken the time to start doing the rest of the painting on it.
Is it a psychological block, or you just got more interested in something else, or
I'm hoping I've been more interested in something else, but there might be something to that.
yeah?
But
Because
I don't know yet.
I run
We'll
into
see.
that.
We'll get there. We're going to have to get there because I'm about to enter paint phase on a lot of stuff. The little nostalgia build, my Airfix Morris 6x4 tractor and the 40mm Bofors is the assembly's done. I still got a little work to do on the little figures that come with it, but
Mm-mm.
the gun and the tractor are finished. The build's done, so that's about to enter paint. And again, that was not a accuracy detail kind of project. I was really just trying to get a clean build and build that old kit a lot better than I did when I was 11 or 12 the first time I built it, which was a long time ago.
And you know what? Sometimes those just simple nostalgia builds are a great, especially if you're doing intense stuff. Those nostalgia builds can be a nice little break. Where you don't get all wrapped around the axle trying to super detail it or photo etch the heck out of it, and just get a nice build.
I'll probably buy another one.
Yeah,
Not that kit, but another vintage Airfix. Maybe their little quad and 25-pound field gun.
yeah.
That might be a good one. I don't
Well,
know.
buy an older molding.
Yes, I will. I've learned my lesson on that one. I'll buy an older mold. Also, I'm working on the base for the PT-76. I'd really like to get that done and enter it in Indianapolis. Is what I would
Yeah.
like to do.
Well, that's not
That
too
might.
far away.
That's a couple 3 weeks, four
Yeah,
weeks, maybe
four. Yeah,
three
four.
weeks.
First week of
Okay,
March.
good. Oh, it's on the 7th, right? It's on the last
Yeah,
day of the first week.
yeah.
Okay, bonus. I get a little extra time. It shouldn't take that long,
Well, and
right? Shouldn't.
worst comes to worst, you can take it up and enter it without the base.
Yes, absolutely could do that. It would be a deviation from my normal style, but push come to shove, that would also work.
Well,
Other than that, I'm planning something new.
oh, all right.
So
Maybe you can tease it on the Facebook page.
maybe it might get teased in one of the later segments here tonight, but we'll
Oh,
wait till we
okay.
get there.
All
Well,
right.
what about you? What are you working on?
Well, the AS1 has gone back into work. Uh, Scott Skippy King came over and he and I modeled together a couple of weekends ago, and that got me working back on the AS1. So I'm hoping. I mean, it's 95% done. Uh, it's just some cleanup, some respray, and it'll be ready to be done. So heck, if I can finish two in 2 months. I might not get 52 in a year done, but I might get 12. That would be a great improvement for me. Number two is I got the Airfix MiG 17 that I mentioned previously. I can see myself building a lot of these kits. I love this airplane, and right now, even with some flaws, I think it's probably the best MiG 17 out there in 72nd scale. So I've started my first one. I'm going to build it straight out of the box. I mean, there are some people who've gone online, and some people have trashed it. Some people have made suggestions for improvements, and there's always, every kit can be improved. But since I plan on building this thing probably multiple times, first time I'm just going straight out of the box just to see what it looks like.
Well, if you're gonna build more than one, that kind of makes sense. You know, you can kind of feel it out.
Exactly. See where the
Find
pitfalls are.
Yep, find all the warts. And so, are you going to use the kit decals? This is going to be a
No, actually, I got a set of extra kit decals. There's a little country that used to be known as Upper Volta in Africa. It's now known as Burkina Faso. And they had exactly one MiG 17. In fact, it's the only jet the Air Forces of Burkina Faso has ever operated. We think it probably came from Libya. It was used in a small border conflict with Mali. It's a fairly simple color scheme of kind of an olive drab over a fairly bright blue. And one of my areas of interest is smaller air forces. And so one
well,
of the
that would be
things,
one.
exactly, that was one of the things I'd like to do is build one aircraft representing all these different small air forces, just as a nice marking study. And so, it's unlikely I would ever build another aircraft that was used by Burkina Faso. So this is kind of two birds with one stone. And then finally, and I'm getting pretty close on this, I mentioned the mystery build last time. You know, some of the best modelers I know, Dave Crouch in our club is one of them, build across spectrums. They'll build a car one time, do a figure bust the next, and then do a 48 scale airplane the next. Really good modelers, many of them have that ability, and I think that they stretch their skills and they learn a lot. So I decided to try something. I've done a couple of 35th scale anti-tank guns. I've done one T-34, which many years ago, and looks like the showroom kit or the showroom model that Stalin must have looked at when he decided to buy the T-34, because it's the cleanest tank you will ever see in your life. I thought I'd heavily weathered it at the time. In retrospect, it was nothing much. But I've got an interest in the 1940 Norwegian campaign. Speaking of which, the fifth most number of listeners to our podcast are from Norway. So hi, all of you. But I've got a real interest in the Norwegian campaign of 1940 because it's the first combined arms operation. Land, sea, and air. The poor Norwegians got shafted by everybody on all sides. So I wanted to do something different. So I came up with the idea to do a vignette and try and tell a story with a vignette without a figure. No figures, just landscape and equipment. And so I got the Rich Models British equipment and built the anti-aircraft stand for the Bren gun. And I'm going to try my hand at a vignette with the Bren gun and the Bren gun stand and some empty clips and the empty clip box and a helmet and just that and groundwork, and see if I can tell an effective story with just that, no figures, no nothing. So, and it's stretching my skills. And I got to say, It's not anything I've ever done before, and I'm having a heck of a fun time with it, which is, let's face it, what Modeling Mojo is all about.
Now you sent me a picture of the groundwork. Is that a test, or is that the
Yes.
piece
No,
that's
that
actually going on in the base you showed me?
no, the piece I showed you, I took and did a 1 inch by 1 inch test, just because I've never done groundwork before. And there's all these products out there, and with different products, and all of these books and instruction manuals. And since I'd never done it at all, I decided to uh, do a 1 inch by 1 inch test piece of landscape. Um, the actual base, the vignette's actually going to be about 2 inches by 2 inches. And I just did it just to try and learn, to see what's out there, to see if I could replicate the type of muddy, snowy terrain that I'm going to want to replicate before I actually try it on the actual vignette. And it's enjoyable. It's amazing. There's a lot of products out there, and I think that they probably make it a whole lot easier for people who are um, just getting into that particular hobby, or that particular subset of the hobby. Makes it much easier than maybe it used to be with cellular clay and acrylic paints, and that's about it.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I think you can do a lot now and not have to make as big a mess of your workbench and various containers and mixing utensils and all that, because a lot of this stuff now is right out of the jar.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use a product from the same line that you used. I think did you use Vallejo's?
Yes, I use Vallejo's. Actually, I use the asphalt terrain because it has the right consistency for what I was looking for, and you paint it over and you can make it look like a fairly convincing mud. But they make it in all sorts of, earth, sand, etc., etc.
Yeah. So for this little Airfix build I'm finishing up, I want to do a little display on the kind of the same vein that Plasmo off YouTube uh, does with his 72nd scale armor and aircraft. He
Yeah.
just does these nice little compact foam based scenes, and I'm going to give that a go for this little gun and tractor.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
a
going to
nice.
use one of these textured earth products and just see what happens.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Give it a
nice
shot.
that's a nice tease for a future episode, because sometime in the future you and I'll do an episode where our special segment is nothing but talking about different YouTube channels for modelers, and there's a lot of good stuff out
Speaking of good stuff out there,
there.
last week, a week before, not real
Yeah.
sure, the Nuremberg Toy Fair was held, and we've got an opportunity to discuss a few things here. Our friends in Canada with Scale Model Podcast had their joint podcast with On the Bench and Dave Goldfinch, and they talked a little bit about new kits, but not a whole lot from Nuremberg Toy Fair in that episode, because they had bigger fish to fry
Yeah.
with that episode. And so here we are. A lot of stuff now. Generally speaking, I don't know how you felt about it. We talked about it a little bit, but not too much. But I was a bit surprised this year. Usually, one of the more prolific hobby information venues kind of picks it up and runs with it, and I didn't feel like this year that really happened.
Yeah.
I had to dig a little deeper for stuff. Maybe I was looking in the wrong place.
Well, IPMS Deutschland always has a good report, and then they do broken down by category and then by scale. But it was a little hard to find. But once I found it, they did a nice presentation of everything that had been announced. I thought the it was a little thin this year on totally new stuff. There's a lot of reissues, a lot of stuff like that, but I thought the completely new announcements were relatively thin compared to previous years. Um, but there's still plenty of good stuff out there. I mean, more than I can build in a year, that's for sure.
Of what was announced, what what did you like?
Well,
Because I think you're right. I think I did comment in one of our conversations that 72nd scale aircraft seem to be excessively light.
Not excessive. It was lighter. There's no question that this year was lighter, and I don't know if that's because companies are worried about an economic downturn because it's been so good for so long, and so they're hedging their bets or they're resting on their laurels, or but there's still plenty of good stuff. Revell, now this is 48 scale, and I like to tease the 48 scale guys, but Revell in 48 scale announced a brand new SR-71, and I have a feeling that's going to be real popular because the only 48 scale SR-71 was the old Testers Italeri kit. And well, while it was a fine kit, it was molded back in the 80s. So you're talking about technology improvements over 30 plus years. So it's really, I think, going to be popular with the 48 scale guys. Um, what's one of the ones you saw that you were jazzed about?
Well, I tell you, we've been hitting mini art pretty hard here, and not in the positive light. A little bit,
Oh, come on, the pigeons were fun.
right? They've announced uh, T-3485, the model 1943 version from Factory 112, which was a definite hole. You know, I went on our first episode about wanting an STZ model 42.
Yeah,
This is easily the number two, but I'm so jazzed about this one. As soon as this one hits, I'm buying it. Uh, this is the early T-3485 where they shoehorned a version of the K-52 85 millimeter anti-aircraft gun into this tank. D5T was the designation for the armament for this tank, and it's got a little different. The turret's not quite shaped the same, and the gun mantlet is really different than the later, more prolific T-3485s. But this is a version I've always wanted to do, and I probably have 4 or 5 different resin turrets for this. Now I don't
well,
have to use any of them. So
eBay, here we come.
eBay, here we come. But it's a full blown interior kit, though. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah,
I told you last week that I'd rather pay what I say, for sake of argument, $50 for a kit with the option of buying a $30 upgrade for an interior later. No, I'd rather not do that. I'd rather
yeah,
buy a $60 kit with no interior than
yeah.
have to buy an $80 kit with an interior, even if the added interior costs me more in the end, because most of the time you just don't want it. It's too much. It's just
Right.
too much.
Well,
And
and
it's a
they're
model that you'll never finish.
right. Well, and not only that, but they're very unless you do some weird deconstruction, and other than like a late Panzer IV, there are not a lot of tanks that even if you open it up normally, you're going to see a lot of the interior. Um, and I suspect the T-3485 is probably like that. I mean, you could see some if you opened up every hatch, but you know,
It's certainly
sometimes,
not the most visible.
yeah, exactly. So sometimes I do think it's a waste. Um, Now, Special Hobby for me announced a KI-54. Um, that's a Japanese small transport trainer that was used during World War II in 72nd scale. This is a hole in Japanese World War II aircraft. And that airplane was used a lot in all theaters. Um, and definitely is one that the Japanese aircraft modelers are going to be interested in. So I was quite pleased to see that announced at Nuremberg.
Special hobby.
Yeah, Special Hobby. And Special Hobby has improved to the point where their new kits are pretty much the equal of Edward or a manufacturer like that. So some of their early kits were rough. They had a learning curve, um, But
So you answered my next question: is how far
which
they had come.
they've come to the point where they are the they're no longer a short run or second tier or third tier manufacturer. They are Hasegawa Edward level of quality uh, in their new stuff. So that's going to be really popular. And I definitely will pick one of those up for my large Japanese collection. So, what's another one that you saw?
Really, only one more for me that really got me excited, and it wasn't too much of a surprise because somebody let the cat out of the bag early. But to me, is doing a Renault R35
Yeah,
French light tank.
that looks nice.
In fact, one of the YouTubers has already built it.
Oh,
Somebody
really?
got he got some early pre Nuremberg releases, and yeah, it's looks a lot better than the old Heller kit, and looks better than anything else that's been done since that one. So definitely going to buy that one.
It's nice to see the French World War II stuff getting some love, but I know that was a big hole for a long, long time. So uh, it's kind of nice to see those getting some attention.
Well, especially with the Tamiya quality, because the Hobby Boss and Trumpeter ones are kind of and the Bronco ones, it's kind of a mixed bag.
Sure.
Some of them are okay, some of them are not much more fun to build than one of the old Heller kits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was a nice one.
Well, good.
Glad to see it. So I've got two definite stash editions.
Well,
Unfortunately,
the one other one that I saw that piqued my interest was I've got an interest in 72nd scale anti-aircraft missiles. Hobby Boss has announced that they are doing an SA-2, um, the the Russian SAM, and while this has been kitted a number of times before, including way back to Airfix did one. Many years ago. Um, a
yeah,
modern,
it's a rare kit.
well, I've got one in the stash, so who knows? It might be headed your way. Um, the I have no doubt that Hobby Boss will do a really nice SA2, and I mean that has a number of uses for me, either in a Cuban Missile Crisis setting or in a Vietnam setting, and so I was happy to see that because that's definitely one that I'll pick up. So, speaking of additions to the collection, what exactly broke your wallet this past month or so?
Well, it's been a little more than a month since we've hit this topic before, and I've not been terrible. This gets back to my hint for my project planning.
Uh-huh.
I finally found at a price I could pop on Hobby Boss BM13N Katusha.
Yeah.
Now this kit, it's a big kit, really. Well, it's got a lot of parts,
Yeah.
but I bought it for the launch system on it. I don't. It's a post-war truck. It's just like the Italeri kit, except it's a hell of a lot better. It's a post-war Soviet truck with the same configured launcher as the World War II Katusha systems. So I picked this up. I don't know. Maybe Travis and some of the sci-fi guys will be interested in a truck because I'm only using the launch rails and the elevation system. That's it.
Gotcha.
So I picked that up. It's nice. It's the same as the Italeri, same vehicle, same truck and launcher, but again, it's a lot more modern because that kit was from the mid '70s, I believe.
Yeah. Well, good.
And in a when I see a deal, it's hard not to buy something.
We all have that problem.
Right. Scale Model Graveyard on Facebook. Our non North American listeners could probably give a rip about it because basically it's a Facebook page where people are selling their stashes, and some of them are selling new stuff, I'm sure, but uh, some guy was selling a bunch of bagged kits. Like there'll be these modelers out there when they in their stash they ditch the boxes
Yeah.
and everything's in a like a file drawer in a Ziploc bag. and then they end up selling their stash and they have no boxes. Anyway, it's another Hobby Boss kit. It's a little Soviet T-38 amphibious tank. Got it for a really, really good price, so I went ahead and picked that up.
Well, good.
And then finally, and I've been putting these through the ringers on this Airfix build since I got them, but from Anthony Goodman of Scale Model Podcast fame, I got his super sanding blocks. And I'm enjoying the heck out of those, and I'm going to write a review up for Tactical Notes for our club newsletter, and it's going to be favorable.
Well, good. Well, good.
And I can say I recommend those. I got a couple suggestions for future products from Goodman models, but right now with the super sanding blocks, yeah, he's got a good product, and I like using them, and they solve a few problems that I've had in the past, not just sanding in general, but I like to wet sand. I like the wet sand on a flat surface. And these things are the substrate's acrylic.
Yeah.
So they're rigid and they're square, and I can just set it on the bench, put a couple dabs of water on it, and go to town. I don't have to get out the sheet of plate glass and put a whole or half sheet of sandpaper on there and douse it with water and make a big honking mess. I can just do this. It's like the postage stamp size version of that. And for most things I'm working on, that works great. And I really like them. So there'll be more to come on that in the future. And we'll have to make sure we send him a copy of Tactical Notes when I do that review. And hopefully it generates a sale or two for him, because I think, he's putting himself out there. He's putting some money into this, and it's a little cottage industry. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, good. We'll have to retitle this segment for this month for me is what broke Jim Bates's wallet, because Jim's a modeler out in Seattle, and he and I have known each other forever, and like a lot of modelers.
I hear he sent you a big box of love.
Yes, he did. Like a lot of modelers, Jim and I over the years, whenever one of us is going to place an order from Hannett's or someplace like that, we'll email the other guy and say, "Hey, I'm going to place an order from so and so. Do you need anything?" And of course, we always need something. And then it accumulates, and then 4 or 5 times a year, we end up sending each other boxes of stuff. Um, well, just post Christmas, actually mid January, Jim sent me what had accumulated over stuff that he had purchased that I'd asked him to pick up. So, in addition to the Airfix MiG 17, I got the Bronco Dongfeng, which is the first Chinese intermediate range ballistic missile. It's basically a stretched version of the V2. It's a copy of the Russian SS2, and that's in 72nd scale. And the new Clearprop KI-51 Sonia, he sent me one of those, and Clearprop is amazing. They came out of nowhere and have had no learning curve. I cannot tell you how impressed I am by that stuff. And then finally, in the same box was the new KP MiG-19. And this isn't the old KP MiG-19. This is the MiG-19 that KP has produced after AZ took them over. It's nice. It's not Edward. It's not Hasegawa. It's not Tamiya, but it's definitely nice. So it didn't break my wallet, but it broke Jim's wallet. Now, I did send.
He'll get you on the flip side, right?
Yeah, well, I did send him a box this past week of stuff that I had accumulated. So it's not a wholly one-sided transaction. Although I probably still owe him some more stuff. So we'll have to see what we can do about evening that out.
Well, among friends, it always comes out in the wash. So
it does. It does. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we didn't do too bad there.
No.
Our special segment tonight is titled Tools of the Trade, and we're going to discuss some of our favorite tools and accessories on our workbenches and talk about a little bit how we use those or what have you.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
announce. So Dave,
Yeah.
what you got for us?
A couple of things. First and foremost, we're excluding airbrushes from this conversation because that's a completely standalone topic. So we're talking about tools that other than airbrushes. And I don't know about every modeler I know is always looking for a tool that will make them a better modeler. And that's kind of a double-edged sword because there's no tool out there that's going to magically make you a better modeler. But on the flip side, there's that old handyman saying the right tool for the job. And it certainly is true that there are a lot of tools out there that when you are faced with a particular challenge or a particular need, having the right tool does make all the difference. Now, I think there is one exception to what I just said, and that is the first tool I'm going to recommend, and that is it's a company out of Japan called, believe it or not, God Hand, Godhand, and they make a bunch of modeling tools, and they make a sprue cutter. This thing is not cheap. It is like $45 and you're thinking $45 for a thing to cut sprue, to cut attachment points off of sprue trees. And, you when you were a kid, you did that with a set of nail clippers. Um, but
I
this
just
thing,
twisted them off.
yeah, or twisted them off. This thing is amazing. It it cuts so flush to the attachment point that it never gouges, it never leaves a mark. You can hit it with the lightest brush of a sanding stick, and you would never know where the attachment point was. This thing truly does. It's one of the few tools I would say actually does make you a better modeler. They're not cheap, but they're worth it. Uh, and that's the God Hand. I think the catalog number is SPN 120, and they're great.
Should probably write that down so I can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put pictures and all of that, and links and such. So what's your first tool?
My Optivisor.
Yep, sucks getting old, doesn't it?
Sucks getting old, and man, I don't know what it happens sometime between 40 and 40 and a half. But
Yes.
my 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 near vision tanked, and it tanked quickly. And I talked to the ophthalmologist about it, and they're like, "Well, yeah, it's to be expected. The muscles that help you focus your eyes they wear out and stretch, and they just can't get it done anymore." So Optivisor is a binocular magnifier. You wear it like a visor, Optivisor, and this is like Viagra for scale modelers.
Helps it get it done when you gotten old.
That's right. Helps you get it done when you've gotten old. And the my little Zis 2 anti-tank gun is the first thing I've completed exclusively using this. And man, I can't see anything up close anymore without it. Now, if I take out my contact lenses and use my cursed nearsightedness, I can do better. But if I've got them in, I've got to have this. I can't see. I can't see within 18 inches of my face. I'll break
Yeah.
something. But on the other hand, when you're wearing something when all your work is done at 2x magnification, it probably does make you a better modeler. It helps you fix a lot of stuff you kind of didn't notice before.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I know a bunch of modelers who take photographs in progress for a number of things to post or to write articles. But one of the things I have noticed is you'll notice something in a photo in progress photograph of your model that you would not have noticed looking directly at the model. And I'm not 100% sure why that is, but it's true. I'm not so sure that that's not a a bad technique for checking yourself. But you're right about the eye, the curse of getting older, um,
Now, it does have one drawback.
which is,
When you've got the visor down, your highball glass
yes,
just hits it right before you get to your mouth.
yeah, yeah.
So you got to
Or
flip it up to take a
yeah,
sip. It
or
it
if you
just
flipped it
works.
up and you lean in and it catches on your lamp, which
Yeah,
I've done
well,
before. Well, my next recommendation, and this one is probably pretty well known to most modelers, the Flexifile, particularly the new Mark II handle with the bend in it. These came out 20, 25 years ago. It was an idea that when you saw it, you're like, why didn't somebody think of that years before? Um, it's just an aluminum frame that you take strips of sandpaper and put it between the ends of the frame and sand. Almost everybody's probably seen them, and they are particularly for aircraft modelers. They're great because a lot of times you're sanding around fuselage or a curved surface, and you don't want to flatten it. You don't want a flat spot. Um, uh, and the Flexifile also makes it easy to hold the model in one hand and the Flexifile in the other and sand along the seams. So, yeah, I'm a huge believer in them, and I particularly like the Mark II handle with the bend in it. It really helps, and I do think that makes modeling easier.
Well, I've not picked up the Mark II handle yet, but if somebody's going to get into Flexifile and they don't have them, I recommend just getting on their website and buying the acrylic box set
Yeah,
that's got like three or four frames, maybe four
yeah,
for sure, and the foam insert for a little stand. And that way
yeah.
you don't have to load and unload the frame. You can put all the grits on their own frame and just rock and roll.
Yep, I agree. So what's your next one?
Another tool I go to all the time is my Waldron sub miniature punch and die set.
Ah, yes.
Waldron, I think somebody's making it now. If anybody's making it, somebody has bought this. But Waldron was a one of the early aircraft aftermarket detail companies, and they used to do these instrument panel placard sets. And the punch and die sets were originally sold to punch out these instrument panels, but they started getting adopted by other modelers for other means. And I use it to punch rivets and small discs for all kinds of stuff. For example, on this Airfix build, the spare wheel for the anti-aircraft gun was really poorly molded. A lot of tool damage because it's 30-40-year-old tool. Half the lug nuts were missing off the wheel, and the center hub was misformed. So I just sanded all that off, and I found punches in this set that were very close to the original diameters of the details that were on the kit part originally. And I punched these out and glue them on, and it's good as new. Another thing I use this for is filling ejector pin marks. One of my favorite things to do with the Waldron set is to punch a disc from 5/1000 evergreen styrene, which is paper thin,
Right.
and you can drop that in an injector pin and flood the thing with liquid cement, and you can fill it up. Sometimes you may have to put a second one in, but it can make quick work of filling those, or to get to the point where you don't have to use so much putty, and you don't have the shrinkage problem with the putty shrinking down and having to come back and hit it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little fragile, and I don't know if Waldron. I don't know if you can still buy this one, but punch and die sets are available from several other manufacturers in the hobby industry, and I need to get a bigger one because ejector pins in injection mold tools are always some standard size. You know, they're like 4 or 5 millimeters or an eighth inch, 16th of an inch, something like that. They're usually standard size. So for ejector pin filling, if you could get a bigger set and a smaller set, odds are you're going to hit a lot of those right on the money.
Yeah.
So if you do you know is anybody still selling it?
Uh, I don't know if they're selling the Walter. I've got both the regular and the sub miniature set, but I know UMM has several sets, uh,
Yes, they do.
and or equivalent sets. Uh, so I mean, there are punching dies out there that are available. But I agree with you. They're a fantastic tool. Um, the final tool that I want to talk about tonight is something I didn't know I needed. When you run across a seam or a raised line or a mold line, the normal modeler technique is to take like an exacto blade, a number 11 exacto blade, or a Swan Morton scalpel, and scrape it along that seam line to try and eliminate it. But the problem that those things have is that the blade is flexible, so it ends up flexing as you're scraping it along that seam, and it either gouges the plastic or doesn't do a real good job removing it. um, I came across a tool that I picked up kind of on a whim, and that's a seam scraper. The one I've got is from Trumpeter. Um, and a seam scraper is exactly what it sounds like. It's a um, looks kind of like an ice pick, a flattened ice pick. The scraper part is solid, fairly thick metal, so that when you run it along a seam, it scrapes it and removes it generally in one pass without damaging the surrounding surface, and does a really good job. I like I said, I kind of picked it up on a whim, but I'm surprised at how useful it is. I'm pretty much using it on nearly every build that I do at some point since I picked it up. So it's a little surprising for me, but I highly recommend picking up a purpose done seam scraper as opposed to using your Exacto knife.
Yeah, I've seen those. Somebody makes, maybe it is Trumpeter. I can't remember the brand.
Well, the Trumpeter one is a good one, I
But
can tell you. I like it.
now is it you'll have to provide a picture cuz
I will.
the one I'm thinking of has a like a curved surface in it that you it's a flat piece of metal.
Yeah, no, this one looks like it's got a black handle, and um, the blade part looks, for want of a better description, like a prison shiv. Um, and it's rigid but sharp, and tapered, of course, and it's excellent for removing seams. Like I said, I was surprised as to how useful it turned out to be.
I've got one that's actually homemade,
Oh, this I want to hear about.
not a scream saver. My next favorite tool,
Sure.
super glue application,
Mm-hmm.
can drive people nuts, especially if they're trying to apply it from the bottle, which is kind of not recommended, at least not
Yeah.
for me. I've got a piece of balsa wood. It's about eighth inch square, 5 millimeters square for those who are not on the English system of measure. It's pretty much everybody else but us, right?
Right.
I cut this about the length of a pencil, about 5.5 inches long, so you can hold it just like a pencil. You can hold it between your fingers, and then it rests against your first knuckle like a pencil. And in the end of it, in the end grain, I push a piece of about 12 thousandths brass wire with about a 1/4 inch sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I find this works best is, I put the super glue like on the polyethylene soda bottle cap or something like that, milk jug, something like
Yeah.
that. Put the super glue on there, and then this works a lot better if you kind of prime it first. You get a little dried super glue on the end of it first, and then you can just pick it up and put it where you want it with this
Hmm,
little piece of wire. And then when it starts to build too big of a bead on the end, you just pull it out a little bit and clip it off and start the whole thing over again. But it's a really cheap, inexpensive, and very accurate super glue placement tool that you can make
cool.
yourself.
Well, you'll have to supply us a picture of that. That's I've used a couple of these photo etch super glue applicators, and they're so. My big problem with most of those is that they pick up too big a bead of super glue. And then the other thing I've used is, and this is another thing Jim Bates turned me on to, off of Amazon. I've gotten these are like makeup brushes. They're very pointed. I think they're used for eyeliner or eyelashes, and they are disposable, and uh, um, they have bristles that come to a very fine point, and you can pick up a very small amount of super glue on the end of one of those and apply it pretty precisely. But I'll be interested to see a photo of your contraption.
it's it's pretty simple, but sometimes that's best, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes simple is best.
I'm trying to think if I got anything else. Do you have any more?
Nope, I think that's it. So I think we're coming to the end of the episode. Who's your shout outs for the month?
My shout out for the month of February is USA Gundam Store.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought you might find that a little interesting.
Yeah, you're doing Gundams now on the side. I mean, you got teenage boys.
No, I'm not. I'm not doing Gundams, but I needed something, and this gets back to this Renault R35. Remember, I said somebody on YouTube. I can't remember. He's whoever this is. He's the person who had this advanced boxing of this kit, and the French camouflage has, well, not all of it, but the schemes everybody really wants to do are the ones that have the black demarcation line between the colors.
Yeah.
And he used a Gundam paint marker for this.
Huh.
So I started looking around at where I could buy one, and I remembered that the guys at Scale Model Podcast had mentioned USA Gundam Store, I think. And then there's a paint line that is, I think, sponsoring On the Bench. You'll have
Yeah.
to clear that up for us. But they advertise a line of paint. I believe it's an Australian line of paint that is now available in North America through USA Gundam Store. So I got on their website and I found the markers I needed and I ordered them. And I tell you, it's first rate. Place the order. As soon as they cut the shipping label, you get an update. As soon as it's in the mail, you get an update. I get my package in like 2.5 days, 3 days. Get a follow up email after that. How'd it go? Here's a survey if you want to do that, so you can rate their business. And they sent me my markers, a nice handwritten postcard from whoever packed the order, and they sent a nice USA Gundam Store decal,
Oh, cool.
which promptly went on the side of my spray booth with all my other decals I get for
That's that's where I put
brew
mine.
pubs and barbecue joints and stuff like that. So
I'll have to post a picture on the Facebook page of mine because I do the exact same thing.
a pleasant little transaction from them. And I don't know how often I'll ever order from them, but they had the marker I needed, so I ordered it from them, and they did a bang up job even for such a small order.
Well,
So
good.
there you go, USA Gundam Store.
Well, good. I've got two shout outs for this month. The first one is for those of the listeners up in the northwest. IPMS Seattle's having their spring show coming up this Saturday. I think it's the 15th. And since Bates was kind enough to send me the box, the least I can do is give a shout out to his local show up there. So if you're in the area, go by, and it's a great show. Lots of models, good people up there. So drop on by if you're in the area. The other shout out is to all of the folks down under. Thanks to the on the bench guys, we're surprisingly popular in Australia. Of the top 10 cities that we have people listening to our podcast in, like 5 of them are in Australia. So we have more listeners in Australia than either Canada or Great Britain. So I want to thank them all for listening, and we appreciate the support.
I can second that. It's really been a big boost for the
Yes.
the shout outs they've given us, and they've been funny. I have to admit, I've enjoyed those a lot, and I've talked to Dave a little bit on email
Yeah.
back and forth, and really appreciate it, guys. Really appreciate it.
Very much
And
so.
it's all fun, and we do. They mentioned it in their last episode. We've kind of got a community growing here, and everybody's having a good time. And
Yeah. I know I am.
we probably have all the same listeners, but there's plenty of room here to listen a long time.
Yep. I agree.
Well, I think that's it for this episode, Dave.
I think it is too. I'm glad that both of us are still keeping up the modeling mojo.
Mine's pretty good, but I'm getting to where I'm going to have to start painting some more. So
Good.
I think it's time to start another build.
Yep.
And I think my next build's going to use about 3 kits to get one model. So that one will be fun. We'll talk about that more in the future.
You'll have to document that. I'm sure the listeners will like to follow along.
All right. Well, until next time, so many kits.
So little time. See you next time.
All right. Good night, Dave.
Good night.